You probably recall last week we explored the history and teachings of Srila Rupa Goswami, who is one of, as I mentioned, one of our founder acharyas, a very, very important person in our line. And of course, we concluded that with a prayer, taking Rupa Goswami to allow us to become as dear as he is to Lord Chaitanya. This week we're going to, because as you all know, this Wednesday, at least in this part of the world, Wednesday is Janmastami. I'm assuming in other parts of the world it's also Janmastami on Wednesday or possibly Tuesday. So here we're following Janmastami on Wednesday. And I want to just delve a little bit into the history of Janmastami, look at some ways it's observed outside ISKCON, because some of these things we can actually learn from, or some of these things we could potentially incorporate into ISKCON. Also looking at how to observe it in ISKCON, how to observe it at home. And I wanted to continue in the mood from last week to conclude with a prayer to the Lord. Now, I've quoted from, there's a few different references we've sourced from this week. Of course, Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, which discusses the reasons for Krishna's appearance. Then Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 1, it talks about how the Devatas, headed by Lord Brahma, they approach the Lord and they pray for him to descend. So some very nice prayers there that we can recite on Janmastami. Also, you can look at Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 3, also describes a lot of detail about the appearance of the Lord. And then a very interesting section in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 4th Canto, Chapter 3. This is Lord Shiva discussing with his wife Sati. And there, in this verse, Sattvam Vishuddhan Vasudeva Shaktitam, we see that Lord Shiva is instructing Sati on how to receive the Lord into our heart. Okay, so again, I present this webinar as my feeble attempt to glorify the Lord and to express thanks to him for appearing in my life. I can say that before the appearance of Krishna in my life, my life was no better than the life of a dog. I'm not saying in any humility, I was just very honestly, I had a very difficult and unfortunate existence, but by the mercy of Krishna, my life has become very, very auspicious. And I'm hoping you get as much out of it as I got from preparing for this webinar. It was very, very enriching for me. I'd also like to express my deepest gratitude to Vijay Baladev Prabhu from South Africa. He assists significantly with the research for this webinar, so very grateful to him. And the plan is to work on all the major festivals we follow, looking at the history of the festival, what the meaning of the festival is, how to observe the festival, and different things like this. And eventually, I have a thought to eventually turn all this into a book on festivals in ISKCON and different ways we could observe festivals either in the temple or at home, or you might be on a traveling or whatever. So how you can observe the festival, and of course, I put this call out each week. If any of you are inspired to help research for these different webinars, please get in touch with me. There's a lot of research goes into it, and I just have one perspective on devotional service, but I'm really interested to hear and see your perspectives on it. And we're all inspired by different passages from Prabhupada's books or different experiences we've had at festivals. So I'd really would appreciate if you could get involved and help me to prepare all of this as a service to the Vaishnavas. Now, I want to look a little bit, to start looking a little bit at the history of Janmastami, because it's quite an interesting history. Hang on, just kind of mute a few sounds coming through, so just muting everyone. Sorry about that. Now, of course, we generally refer to it as Janmastami, but we see in different traditions or in different parts of ISKCON, maybe it's referred to Krishna Janmastami. In Maharashtra, for instance, one of the states in India, they refer to it as Gokulashtami. In Fiji, it's called Krishna Ashtami. And in other places, they refer to it as Sri Krishna Jayanti. Jayanti basically means the appearance day. And of course, you probably have heard of Gandhi Jayanti, but referring to Mahatma Gandhi. But Jayanti is not really a term that would be used for a jiva. It's more used for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Specifically, we see referring to Krishna Jayanti or Balaram Jayanti, but generally not used for other personalities. And as we know, this has been celebrated for at least the last 5,000 years. And if we look at the Gregorian calendar, some folks have done a calculation on the appearance day of Lord Krishna, and it's estimated to be approximately, they set different dates. Some say 17th of July, 18th of July, 21st of July, and around about 3,228 years BCE, which means if you add 2020, that means 5,240, give or take a few years, 5,248 years. That's the average I got from them. Some say 27, some say 29. So there's different things there. So, more than 5,000 years ago, Krishna appeared in Vrindavan or in Mathura. Now, we see that until Srila Prabhupada ventured to the West 55 years ago, the observance of Janmastami was largely confined to Vaishnava and Hindu communities in India, and of course Hindu communities around the world, because we know that in many parts of the world there are very large Hindu communities outside of India. But now we see, thanks to Srila Prabhupada, it's now a great festive occasion celebrated with joy and devotion in homes and temples around the world, all over the world, by the grace of Srila Prabhupada. And of course, for us in ISKCON, this is a much more important day, because the day after is Srila Prabhupada's Transcendental Appearance Day, which for all of us is a very, very significant occasion. Now, let's see, Krishna, as most of us know, Krishna appeared in Mathura, but a little known fact is that he also appeared simultaneously in Kavaca. So he appeared to Deity and Vasudeva in Mathura, but at the same time, he appeared to Yashodamai in Gokul. And this is explained by Srila Prabhupada in the 9th verse of the 4th chapter of the 10th canto. Now, I won't read the verse, but there's just a few words that are interesting there. And it says, Anuja Vishnu, which means Anuja means the younger sister, and Vishnu means of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the translation, it says, Yogamaya Devi, the younger sister of Lord Vishnu, slipped upwards from Kamsa's hand. So we know the story how Kamsa, he mercilessly killed each of the children of Devaki, one after the other, by dashing them on the stones of the prison cell that they were being kept captive in. And so when the 8th child appeared, then, who Kamsa thought was the 8th child of Devaki, he picked her up and he tried to dash her head smash her head on the stones of the prison, but she slipped out of his hands and went up into the sky and appeared as Devi, the goddess Durga, with 8 arms and equipped with weapons, and etc. And Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport, he said the word Anuja, this is just an extract from the purport, the word Anuja, meaning the younger sister, is significant. When Vishnu or Krishna took birth from Devaki, he must have simultaneously taken birth from Yashoda also. Otherwise, how could Yogamaya have been Anuja, the Lord's younger sister? Now we see that Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, he also confirms this in his commentary on the same verse. So we can understand that Yasodamaya gave birth to 2 children, actually. She gave birth to a young girl, to a baby girl, and to also who was Yogamaya, and also to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then when Vasudeva, when he brought the baby from Mathura to Vrindavan, then he swapped the child he had for the baby girl, then Krishna's mystic potency covered him over. He didn't see that there was another boy there, and those two forms, they became one Krishna. Not merging, because Krishna's not merging, because both forms are Krishna. One is Vasudeva Krishna, so Vasudeva Krishna is nothing but an expansion or another form of Nandana Krishna. So we see that, so Krishna, he appeared like that. And so we can see here also, it's understood that many Hindus, they believe Krishna to be an incarnation of Vishnu. They say actually he's the 8th avatar. But Gaudiya Vaishnavas, based on the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his followers, have a very different understanding. We accept that Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And this is based primarily, but of course many places, we see Jiva Goswami and different acharyas quote many different places, but primarily based on a verse from the third canto, or the third chapter of the first canto, the very well-known verse where it says, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, how Krishna, he's the original Supreme Person of Godhead, and all these portions and plenary portions of the Lord have come from him. He is the original. So this is our Gaudiya Vaishnava understanding. Now, as far as the time of year the festival or the Lord appeared, it typically falls just as the monsoons in North India are finishing, so things are drying out a little bit, but the fields are laden with crops, and all the grass is green and growing. It's very, very auspicious, very, very plentiful time. And the fields are full of crops, but not yet time to harvest. So the communities have a little bit of time on their hands. So it's a very good time for them to follow a festival. So by Krishna's arrangement, they've all he appeared at that time when it was suitable. So as we know, according to our Vaishnava calendar, he appeared on the Astami day of the Krishna Paksha during the month of Rishikesh, which usually falls mid-August to early September. Now, interestingly enough, it's described by the acharyas also that, even though he fell on the Astami, which is the 8th day, there's 8 days after it says the Krishna Paksha means the moon is going into the darkness, it's becoming darker. So it was 8 days after the full moon. But interesting enough, as the acharyas described, the moon, out of great happiness seeing the appearance of Krishna, the moon became full again and stayed full for quite some time, because the moon was just overjoyed by the appearance of Krishna. And of course we also understand it's a time of many festivals, because not long before, it was last Monday, actually, Monday just gone, that it was Balaram's appearance day. And then 2 weeks after Janmastami, on the following Astami, is Srimati Radharani's wonderful appearance day. And of course, as I mentioned before, Krishna Janmastami is followed by Nandotsav, which celebrates the occasion of when Nanda Maharaj, because usually in the Vedic tradition what will happen is after the birth of the child, the next day the father will distribute many gifts in charity. We see the same is there with Jagannath Mishra, that after the appearance of Lord Chaitanya, there's a festival called Jagannath Mishra Utsav, which is not so much celebrated in the West, but it is quite prominent in India, especially in West Bengal. It's very, the Jagannath Mishra Utsav is even in some ways a bigger festival than Gorpanin. And so the same way we see the Nanda Maharaj, he celebrated the appearance of Lord Krishna, and he gave gifts to the community, especially many cows and wealth and grains and things he just gave, because he was so happy with the birth of his child. But for us, Srila Prabhupada has presented it a little bit differently, because he actually took birth on that day. And I think that's one of the reasons he was sometimes called Nandu, because he appeared on that day. And Prabhupada also made the point that even if the calendar may vary sometimes, that his appearance day should always be followed the day after Janmastami. So even if there is some variation in the calendar, we just always do that. So I just want to look a little bit at celebration. Now, in ISKCON, we're not the only people who observe Janmastami. There are communities, as I mentioned, around the world that celebrate Janmastami. and in many different ways. I just wanted to discuss a few of those different ways here. For instance, we can see in India, for instance, in Mathura and Vrindavan, this is a major festival in that area, and we see that anywhere where there's a large number of Vaishnavas all over India, we'll see that there's celebration of Janmastami. Now, in Indian communities, we see the types of things they will do to celebrate. And some of these points I mentioned are quite common, and I'll go through a few. We won't have time to discuss them all because there's so many different things they do. But you'll see in different Indian communities, they have common practices they follow. And one of those practices they do is they do these Ras Leela dramas or dances. Now, their notion behind the Ras Leela may be significantly different from ours. They kind of might think of it as some kind of childish play or something like that, or sometimes some folks think it's like mundane sex pastimes and things like that. And that's possibly part of the reason they're attracted to it. But for us, we tend to more focus on his other activities rather than Ras Leela, because the Ras Leela, to actually understand the Ras Leela means that someone needs to be above the modes of nature and no longer affected by the different material modes, as we see that Narottam Das Thakur prays, that when will that day come when I'll be free from all these material desires, and then I'll be able to enter into Sri Vrindavan Dham. So that point is very, very important. So yeah, we generally don't follow those sort of things, but of course, and things that are very common in the different communities in India, the Hindu communities, etc. They'll have readings from scriptures, particularly Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. It's not uncommon for Hindu communities to have a full recital of Bhagavad Gita. One thing that Srila Prabhupada introduced, and we can talk about it a little bit later, is Krishna book reading. When he first went to Tokyo, then to get his books printed by Dai Nippon, then Janmastami fell while he was there. So he had the devotees read Krishna book. But that, as you may recall from the Leela Mrita, the devotees became very tired, and there was no dozing off, and they just thought they were unable to get to the end. So Srila Prabhupada, he started to read the Sanskrit. He concluded the whole reading of that section of the Bhagavatam. So readings, bhajans are also very, very popular. They'll go right throughout the day up till midnight. And of course, fasting. Many devotees fast on Janmastami, and also that they tend to stay up all night till midnight, and when there's the last arati. And then of course, people from all different faiths, they'll visit the different faiths will visit temples of Vishnu, Krishna, etc. And also quite a common occurrence in many parts of India is they'll have a festival on the following day as part of the Janmastami celebrations. And also you'll see in some parts, especially you'll see this sort of thing in Gujarat and other places, but then after Krishna's birth at midnight, the celebration at midnight, or the observance at midnight, then they'll have a deity of Gopal, Krishna, like baby Krishna, and they do an abhishek, and they'll dress, and then they'll place the deity in a cradle. Of course, I'm not recommending we do these things in ISKCON, because as Srila Prabhupada told Omkar Prabhu in Vrindavan, he had a deity of Gopal, Lord Gopal, on the altar there. And Srila Prabhupada, he told Omkar, he said, this is not our worship, take him off the altar. This is more the worship of Gujaratis. And that there's some different ideas there that don't really fit with our Siddhanta. And of course, devotees will especially in these traditions, they'll after this they'll break their fast, and they'll share food and sweets and things like that. Now, one interesting thing they do sometimes also, which I think we could potentially follow this in ISKCON, is they draw footprints of baby Krishna. And maybe we don't want to follow it, but it's an interesting idea. They draw footprints of baby Krishna coming from the outside of the house into the house. And the idea is the symbolism of Krishna coming into their home, or Krishna's journey into their home. Then, as I mentioned, many temples organize recitation of scriptures, especially Gita and Bhagavatam. And then the Ras Leela tradition is very popular in Mathura and also the northeastern states, especially Manipur. In Manipur, they have these very, very beautiful Ras Leela dances. And the thing is, in Manipur's a Vaishnava kingdom, and their presentation of Ras Leela tends to be a lot more sedantically sound than what we might see in other parts of India. Now, one thing they also do, which is common in parts of India, in Maharashtra and other parts of India, is called this thing called dahi handi, or sometimes makan handi, very similar kind of observance, where you may have seen this or pictures of this, where they'll have a pot, like a clay pot of yogurt or butter or something, and they hang it high up in the tree, or maybe they make a framework or stick a pole out of the second or third floor of a building. And the idea is all the young boys of the town or the village or whatever, they'll make a human pyramid, and they'll climb up and they'll try to break the pot. I've seen it done in ISKCON temples where they fill the pot up with sweets, and also they try to break that, and then the children like to get the Mahaprasad. So this is an interesting thing, and we know from Krishna's pastimes that the gopis, they would hang these pots up very high so he couldn't get them, and he would try all sorts of creative ways of trying to get the pot and break the pot and then distribute the contents of the pot to the monkeys. So there's quite a few interesting things that go on in different parts of India. Whether they're necessarily suitable for ISKCON, well, that remains to be seen. Now in Gujarat, they follow a similar festival or observe the festival, and they call it Makhan Handi. So instead of having yogurt in the pot, they'll have fresh butter. They do folk dances at the temples. They sing bhajans. They'll visit the temples in Dwarkadish or Natwar. In certain regions, the farmers, they'll decorate their bullock carts and the bullocks, and they'll take Krishna out in procession. They have groups singing and dancing. So this is something we can also do in our temples, is we could take Krishna out on a palanquin. Right, Srila Prabhupada discusses taking the deity out on a palanquin in the Nectar of Devotion. Then in Gujarat, they also have poetry and recitations and things like that. Very much influenced by Pushti Marg, which is the Ballab Sampradaya. Now, one thing that's really interesting in Jammu, you may those of you who have been into India, especially around the period of what is it? I forgot what it's called. When Bhishma passed away at the start of the year. At the start of the Gregorian calendar in January. Makara Sankranti is there. Makara Sankranti is a very, very big kite flying day, and if you're in Delhi or any of the major cities, you'll just see kites everywhere, thousands and thousands of kites. Now, somehow or other, in Jammu, kite flying from rooftops has become part of Janmastami. I don't know, what the connection is, because I've never read anything or heard anything about Krishna flying a kite. But anyhow, that's what they do there. Definitely something I wouldn't encourage introducing into ISKCON. Then Tamil Nadu also, they recite Bhagavatam, and they do what they call columns, but those who had experience in North India would refer to them as rangoli. These decorative patterns drawn with rice, like a rice flour paste. And they sing Gita Govinda. Now, Gita Govinda also another very, very elevated song, where Srila Prabhupada, some devotees wanted to recite Gita Govinda, and Srila Prabhupada explained to them that they weren't actually advanced enough. Gita Govinda is really a bhajan that pure unalloyed devotees would sing, because it's the deepest devotional meditations of Jayadeva Goswami, so a little bit difficult to understand. And also they draw the footprints of Krishna from the threshold of the house into the puja room, which depicts the arrival of Krishna into the house. And of course, one thing that's very prominent in all festivals in India is prasad, and they'll offer things like various types of sweet, fruits, betel, butter, because Krishna is known as Makhan Chor. He's very, very fond of butter, and different savouries that are understood to be Krishna's favourites. One that's quite interesting is I might not have the name of this correct, but it's sidai, I think it's called, where it's just like a fried ball made with rice flour or dal flour and besan flour. When they fry it, there's a lot of moisture in it. It kind of puffs up and it's hollow inside. And apparently it's quite a trick to get them to puff up and not burst. And they have like a savoury version, a sweet version. They also, you've probably all seen these peanut balls they have with gur. They're also apparently quite a favourite that the different people make for Krishna. And they observe fasting. Then in Andhra Pradesh, they recite slokas. The young boys dress up as Krishna, visit neighbours and friends. And joyful chanting of Krishna's names take place in temples and homes in different parts. So they're very, very popular. And then, of course, they make lots of eatables with, or lots of food to offer to Krishna with milk and curd, because as we know, Krishna has the history of a cowherd boy, so lots of milk and curd products were there. Now, also South India, you'll see there's a few popular Krishna temples in South India. Udupi, Kanchipuram, also Guruvayur, and they, of course, they celebrate Janmastami with great endeavour. And apparently the deity that's installed in the Guruvayur temple came from Dwarka, which, the Dwarka that Krishna resided in, which is now under the ocean. Then Nepal, very, very big observance of Janmastami. About 80% of the population in Nepal consider themselves to be Vaishnavas or Hindus. And they do all the standard things. They fast at midnight, they read the Gita, they sing bhajans, kirtans, they decorate the temples. They also decorate their shops, they have posters, and their houses, they decorate, etc. Very, very festive occasion there. Now, believe it or not, in Bangladesh, which is predominantly a Muslim country, Janmastami, at least this is the information I found out, Janmastami is a national holiday, which is, I found quite remarkable for a Muslim country. And they have a procession which starts from Dhakeshwari temple in Dhaka, and it goes through the streets of old Dhaka. And this procession dates back to about 1902. So, started over 100 years ago. It stopped for some time, but then they resumed this procession in 1989. Fiji is another interesting place. About 25% of the population in Fiji practices Hinduism. And of course, ISKCON is very popular and active in Fiji. And it's been celebrated in Fiji for since the first Indians landed there many, many years ago. I'm not really sure how long ago that was, but quite a while ago. And most Hindus in Fiji have got ancestors that originated from either Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, places like that. So for them, this is a very, very important festival. And one of the interesting features of the Janmastami they celebrate in Fiji is it actually goes on for 8 days. And I remember being there a few years ago, and I was quite surprised that it was just like 8 days of celebration. And they start off by having they'll do programs in their homes. They'll have these groups that sing devotional bhajans in the evening and night. Then they do hall programs. They recite Bhagavatam. They distribute prasad. There's so many different activities they do there. Pakistan also they celebrate Janmastami with singing bhajans, and they have pravachan, or they speak about the philosophy, etc. Now we can see that because as I mentioned before, folks from India have been widely spread all around the world, in the Caribbean, in Guyana, Trinidad, Tobago, Jamaica, Fiji, Suriname, which is, I believe it's in South America. Then also you see places like Mauritius. Now, all over the world, you'll see that there's many Hindus in these countries, and they descend from immigrants from, especially I know in Mauritius, for instance, is from Tamil Nadu, but also Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Bengal, Orissa. So for them, Janmastami is also a very, very big festival. I was actually in Mauritius for Janmastami quite a few years ago. It was quite an interesting festival. Now, so that's just how other people celebrate Janmastami. Now, of course, in ISKCON, we also celebrate Janmastami. We have quite a, I guess, a standardized or a regular pattern of how Janmastami is celebrated in our temple. Now, of course, Aarti is one of the features that, and usually they do elaborate Aartis, and even Mangalarti, the deities might be offered garlands before Mangalarti and things like that. Especially if you have Krishna deity there, then he'll wear a garland at Mangalarti. And then, there's also midnight Aarti, which is an additional Aarti. Generally, in a Krishna temple, like a Radha Krishna temple, there's 6 Aartis and bog offerings throughout the, or scheduled Aartis and bog offerings throughout the day. But on Janmastami, they do an extra midnight Aarti. And we'll also see that many of the devotees will fast through until midnight. But of course, in Vaishnavism, there's always room to adjust. And for those who can't fast, I mean, some devotees get quite sick, they get headaches, or they might have acid reflux or something like that. So, they can't observe the full fast. So it's recommended they have fruit and water, because this is also considered to be a type of fasting. Then also often you'll see that the temples will offer new clothes to the deities on these days. And sometimes it might be 1 set of clothes, it could be 2 sets of clothes. They might offer a morning, a new set, an evening, a night set. Sometimes they might also do a flower, a beautiful flower outfit. So there's no limit. Actually, there's a really interesting class that Prabhupada gave in New York in the 60s, where he was saying, that you can dress Krishna many, many times in a day. He says there's no limit. So, as many times as you can reasonably dress the deities. Flowers, of course, I think I mentioned it in a previous webinar, there's a really nice reference from Srila Prabhupada, where Srila Prabhupada says that Krishna, he's from the Vrindavan atmosphere, and he's very fond of flowers. So, of course, on days like this, devotees try to increase the flowers as much as possible, beautiful fragrant garlands and flower decorations, and you can make flower earrings and flower necklaces and flower bangles and bracelets and ankles and all sorts of things out of flowers. So many things. And actually the gopis are very expert at making all these things out of flowers. And of course, nice kirtans, bhajans, singing the Maha Mantra, etc. And one of the bigger features is the Abhishek. Now, I'm just going to touch a little bit on the Janmastami Vidhi. The Janmastami Vidhi is a book that was compiled by Rupa Goswami, and he wrote this primarily for grihastas to observe in their homes. Now, of course, in this day and age, most grihastas might find this a little bit difficult to do, and in fact, most temples find this a little bit difficult to follow. But I'm just going to touch on maybe half a dozen points from it. And I was thinking probably in a later webinar, we could go over this in a bit more detail and explain how things are expanded from the basic 16 items. So the first thing that Rupa Goswami describes is the day before, you just set up a snan bathing. Snan means bathing, bathing means the place or the receptacle where the bathing is done. So the day before, you might build a mandap and cleanse it with cow dung, like a paste made out of cow dung, cleanse the whole area. Then you set up a bathing place, and the mandap can be decorated with banana trees and all sorts of beautiful things. You can make garlands from mango leaves and things like that, and you can decorate it very beautifully. You set up the snan bathing. Then on the day of of Janmastami, on the Abhishek, they have this procedure which is called Swasti Vachan. Now, with Swasti Vachan, what it is, Swasti means peace or auspiciousness. Vach means to speak. So Vachan means prayers or speaking. So the idea is we say various types of prayers to bring about peace and auspiciousness for everyone. So, there's usually a few prominent prayers that are chanted at that occasion. Of course, if you don't know the prayers, Hare Krishna Kirtan is sufficient to bring about auspiciousness. Then, of course, Digbandhana. Digbandhana literally means binding the directions. Like bandhana means to bind up, and dig means all the different directions. But in this situation, it means to, again, invoke auspiciousness and remove all the inauspiciousness from the different directions. Then they establish a pot. and they invite various devatas and various personalities to reside in the pot. Then we do what is called a sankalpa. So sankalpa essentially just means making a ceremonial vow where you'll just state what day it is, what fortnight it is, what month it is, what year it is, and the kalpa and all this type of stuff, and where you're located, and then you say what you're going to do. Not entirely essential, but it's kind of nice because the idea is by making a sankalpa, it gives you a vow in front of the deity. It strengthens your determination to complete this observance for the pleasure of Krishna. Then we have upachara done, or offering items of worship, and we see like essentially it follows the 16 items of worship. Now I will do a webinar on this in the future. I'm just waiting to save up enough money to buy a whiteboard. I'm going to put a whiteboard up on the wall behind here so that I can explain to you how the upacharas are all connected. But this essentially is things like we receive the deity by offering him an asana, prayers to receive him. Then you bathe his feet and different items you offer there. Then the second group is bathing and dressing. And if you look at the bathing, this is the abhishek is actually just the bathing from the normal bathing you would do in the morning with the deities, the brass deities, and it's expanded into 23 different items. Such things as milk, yogurt, sugar water, honey, ghee. Then that's panchamrit. Then the 5 items for the panchagavya, 5 items from the cow means milk, yogurt, ghee, water which is made with a little bit of cow urine in it, and water which is made with a little bit of cow dung. So it's just a few of the items there, and there's all different types of water. Then it's followed by many, many different items that are offered to invoke auspiciousness and protect the Lord. And of course, visitors come, they bring guests for the deities. You have a feast, and one thing that I really like to encourage a lot is different activities for our younger Vaishnavas, for the children, and it's always nice to have fun activities for kids. So maybe they can't directly get involved in deity worship, but there's many things they can do to assist. They can make garlands, they can do so many different things. But the idea is to try to make it fun for the kids, so they're getting to do something nice, and it gives them a positive impression or samskar about Janmastami and deity worship and things like that. Now, of course, there's also, especially this year, I think it's going to be quite relevant in many parts of the world, is observing Janmastami at home. Many temples won't be having public programs. I think most temples won't be having public programs. So a lot of temples will be doing Janmastami at home. So if you have deities at home, there are many things you can do to please the Lord. But if you don't have deities, you could make an altar with a picture of Krishna, or maybe you already have a picture altar, and you offer whatever's practical for you to offer. Don't necessarily try to emulate what they're doing in the temple, because that might be a little bit too difficult beyond your means. But just whatever you can practically do. Of course, it's nice to stretch ourselves a little bit, but not that we should overdo it and come to the point where we think it's too difficult. And of course, whether you have deities or whether you have a picture, it's the same, because the Lord is equally present in both these forms, whether it's a deity or a picture. Now, you have an altar there at home of some form. It could just be the top of a table. It could be a shelf. It could be so many things. You can decorate it with nice vases, put flower petals down, you can put a garland on the picture or on the deities or anything like that. And you can get kids involved. You can have them collect the flowers, collect leaves from the garden. They can make garlands. They can string up garlands, around the room, or chains of beads and different things that string up those fairy lights, and all different types of things. Also, you can offer food to the Lord. You can offer arati. You can have bhajans at home, and also you can do a simple abhishek. Now, obviously, you might not necessarily follow the abhishek from the Janmatiti Vidi, but you could follow a simple abhishek with just with milk. If milk is all you can get, that's fine. Or even if it's just water. If water is all you have, that's fine. But if you want to do a simple one with 5 substances, just milk and yogurt, equal quantities of milk and yogurt, then a little bit of ghee, and similar quantities of honey and sugar as the milk and yogurt. And just keep in mind that you don't want to have 50 liters of charnamrit at home if there's only 4 or 5 of you in the family. So, you know, you'll have a lot of charm reading to dispose of. So just do a small amount that suits your environment. And it's nice to ensure that everything is at room temperature before bathing. The deity shouldn't be too hot, especially with the ghee or the sugar water, and shouldn't be too cold. Not that we want to give the deity a chill, but we don't want to burn. And you can cook at home, you can make a feast for the Lord, you can meditate on what he would like. It could be very simple or it could be very elaborate. And of course you can offer gifts to the deities, all different types of things we can offer as gifts: jewelry, clothes, garlands, peacock feathers, just so many different things are there. Then also, you know, Janmastami, as I was saying before, try to make it fun for the younger Vaishnavas, for your children, and try to engage them as much as possible in deity worship, and especially to encourage them in the mood of reverence. This is a really, really important part of helping them, the young Vaishnavas, to develop a proper mood of worship as they get older, is to encourage this mood of awe and reverence. And depending on the age of the children, there's different things they can do. They can read children's books about the Lord. There's DVDs with Krishna's pastimes, very, very beautiful pastimes that are on some of those. I think the Little Krishna series that came out. And, I mean, I remember watching them all and just being enthralled at how nicely they were done. You know, sometimes the children, they like to dress up as Radha and Krishna and their associates and reenact Krishna's pastimes. And this helps them to learn the pastime. And again, it makes a samskar, an impression upon them. But of course, not that we want them to do it in a funny way, but they should try to be, you know, as best they can, a little bit serious. And they can make jewelry, they can make garlands, things like that. You know, read Krishna's pastimes to the children. And, you know, they can make birthday cards. That's one thing they do in Mayapur, which is really nice on all the major festivals, is all the children make birthday cards and they put them all around the back of Nrsimha's temple there. And some of them are very, very creative. And face painting is also quite a lot of fun. And, you know, so many different things that you can do on Janmastami. So there's just a few ideas here. Now, one of the things I really wanted to touch on, this is like my concluding thought here, I guess, is, of course, we can observe all the externals of the festival, and we can do so many different things with pomp and grandeur. But as with any festival, this festival presents us with a unique opportunity. You know, the idea, at least the way I try to approach these festivals, is to invite the Lord into my heart. But before we invite the Lord into our heart, we have to make a suitable place for him to reside. Now, there's a few little passages I extracted from the Bhagavatam. One's from the 2nd chapter of the 10th canto. And there we see that it's talking about how Krishna appeared in the heart of Vasudeva, and then he transferred from the heart of Vasudeva to the heart of Devaki. And Prabhupada says it wasn't like mundane sex where, you know, semen was injected into the womb, but actually it was transferred from heart to heart. And then one of the acharyas, he writes that the Supreme Lord's entrance into the womb of Devaki from the heart of Vasudeva was a heart-to-heart relationship. So we can understand that the Lord entered into the heart of Vasudeva, therefore his heart was pure. And then from his heart, the Lord entered into the heart of Devaki, so we can understand also that her heart was also very pure. Then the other passage I want to read from is from, as I mentioned before, from the 4th canto, where Lord Shiva is speaking to Sati. And this is 4.3.23. And for those who learn verses, this is quite a well-known verse, but I won't recite the verse. Shuddha Sattva, as described in this verse, is the transcendental position, which is technically called Vasudeva. Vasudeva is also the name of the person from whom Krishna appears. So this is very significant that this state of purity where Krishna appears is called Vasudeva. This is the person, the name of the person from whom Krishna appears. The verse explains that the pure state is called Vasudeva because in that state, Vasudeva, meaning Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is revealed without any covering. So when we achieve this pure state of Vasudeva, then Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he appears in full without any covering. To execute Unadulterated devotional service, therefore, one must follow the rules and regulations of devotional service without desire to gain material profit by fruitive activities or mental speculation. So I won't read the whole thing because there's a nice commentary there from Jiva Goswami, but I just want to read the last bit. Vasudeva is the ground where in Vasudeva, with a long A, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is revealed. When one is free from the contamination of material nature and is situated in pure Krishna consciousness or in the Vasudeva state, Vasudeva, the Supreme Person, is revealed. So, on the auspicious occasion of Janmastami, let us pray that not only may the Lord enter into our lives, but into our hearts, but first, that our hearts become spotlessly pure and a suitable place for Him to reside. This is my prayer for Janmastami. Hare Krishna. Thank you. So, do we have any questions at all? Now, I guess they're all going to have to come through the chat because I couldn't get Facebook working. Okay, Rahul Binyani. Can we use honey on equality? Yes. There's no problem with honey on equality. And you'll see, like, on different, I think some festivals are observed on equality, and we do abhishek for the deities. And so part of doing that abhishek is also honey is there. So, yeah, there's no problem with using honey on equality. Yeah. Do we have any? Okay. Okay, so Rishabh Prabhu is asking, can we have another webinar on the Janmastami Vidhi Abhishek procedure? I was thinking to do that. It is quite an involved procedure, so I just have to, try to meditate on a bit and reflect on how to present it in a way that's going to be digestible, and how to present it in 1 hour. It may be that I just because my experience in ISKCON is we don't follow the full procedure for the Janmastami Vidhi because it's sometimes a little bit complicated. So maybe the best way to do it is just to explain the way we do it, and see there's a lot of details in it. Just like so for some folks, when you do the Panchagavya, some folks will just put the cow urine and the cow dung straight into the water, but then you wind up with bits of cow dung stuck on the deity. So the best way to do that is you should filter it through cloth. And what I do is I'll get a small piece of cloth and put about a teaspoon in, and just like with a tea bag, you just sort of you dangle it in the water, and you let the essence of the ingredient go into the water. Not that we're bathing the deities in cow dung and cow urine, but just use it like that. Then from Vijay Baladev, he's asking, where can we get the different herbs mentioned for use for the Maharabhishek? In Mayapur, at the Mayapur Academy, we sell those. We have bags of Savashodi, Mahashodi, Bijastak, and all the different things that are there. I have some at home. I encourage those to keep in the fridge so the bugs don't get into them, especially with some of the herbs. And they're all cut up, ready to use, because in some countries you can't bring unprocessed. Now, especially when you see them in India, they're kind of a little bit crude in the presentation, meaning that like it's not uncommon to find bird feathers and bits and pieces, in amongst the herbs. So you actually have to clean everything very carefully before you use them for the deities, and then we chop them up really fine. Just get all the rubbish out and stuff like that, because they're not worried about so much about these refinements in the merchants in India. They just sell them. But yeah, when you come to Mayapur next, just look us up, and we'll be happy to help you out with that. Rahul Binyani is, if someone has not taken Diksha, can you do deity Abhishek? At home, yes, but not in the temple. The temple, you're required to be a Brahmana to directly serve the deity. This is the standard that was given by Srila Prabhupada. He stated it very clearly in his purports, letters, conversations, etc., that in ISKCON one must be a Brahmana in order to engage in deity worship. Then from Devaki Vaman Vinyani, Hare Krishna, can we take curd in some of the form, like adding in vegetable sabji during Chaturmasya? I'm assuming you're referring to yogurt, because I know in some parts of India they call yogurt curd. Yeah, it's fine, because it's technically speaking, it's no longer yogurt, because it's just like, there's that Shiram Yata, the Divikara Vishesha Yoga, the verse from the Brahma Samhita, where it's being explained by Lord Brahma that just as milk is transformed into yogurt by the action of acids, the yogurt's nothing but milk, but you can't turn it back into milk. So in the same way, Lord Shiva is a transformation of Krishna. He's nothing but Krishna, but you can't make him into Krishna. So in all these different preparations, of course, adding water to yogurt wouldn't really, that would still be yogurt. Like when you make lassi, it's still really yogurt. But when you make a paneer sabji, or you put or some kind of saag, and you might put yogurt in there, that's fine. The same as, like, if you cook milk, because in one of the months of Chaturmasya we don't drink milk. But then it would mean that on the month where we don't drink milk, you couldn't have yogurt, you couldn't have ghee, you couldn't have paneer, because they're all just transformation of milk. But no, it just means milk on its own, flavored milk or colored milk or whatever. It's just milk. But then on festival days, you'll find that when we do Abhishek during these days, because most of the festivals are happening during this time of year, during the Chaturmasya, and we're using yogurt and we're using milk in the Abhishek. That's perfectly okay. On festival days, generally, we don't follow these restrictions. And another thing that's really interesting is, at some point in the Vaishnava calendar, it mentioned something about fasting from green leafy vegetables. In I think it's the third month of Chaturmasya. This is actually not correct. It's fasting from sak, or in the Bengalis they call it sag. And there's a half a dozen or so different types of sak. So things like spinach, silver beet, motha sak, and coriander sak, and all these types of things we don't eat during this period. But things like cabbage and kale and all that, they're not sak. They're something different. So they're perfectly okay to eat during this time of the year. Okay. Anything else? Should devotees do Abhishek only at midnight at home? I do feel that we need to be practical, especially when we're observing Janmastami at home. Especially if you have younger Vaishnavas at home, you don't really want them up to midnight. It can be quite disruptive for children. In their schedules if they're up very, very late, and you might find that it's difficult to get them back to a regular time. So I know many temples tend to have the Abhishek earlier on, because it's just really difficult to fit everything in. And of course, if you look at the Abhisheks that the different groups do, different temples and stuff, not ISKCON, outside of ISKCON, you'll find their Abhisheks often tend to be quite simple, and they only last a few minutes, whereas an Abhishek in ISKCON will commonly go for 45 minutes to an hour. So, if the temple was to do an Abhishek at midnight, that then means that, you've got the midnight Arati, you've got Abhishek. It might be 1:30, 2 o'clock before things are winding up and before you're sitting down to the feast. So, I think it's possible to make practical adjustments for that. And Srila Prabhupada, he was a pragmatist, and he would quite often adjust things to the different environment. So you just have to be practical and look at your situation. Okay, so thank you all very much. for your participation. And please remember that if you would like to assist in the research, and of course Vijay Baladev, who's on this, who's present on the webinar now, he assisted me with this production of this one. Very grateful for that. So if anyone would like to get involved and help out, then yeah, please do. Okay, look forward to serving you next week, and thank you very much. Prabhupada ki jai.